Thank you, Becky. How's that? And the Vermont Bookshop, and for all the years of connection with the bookstore, where when I was a Middlebury College student, working as a student in the basement here, almost 55 years ago, helping to ship out books, and many of which I read when I should have been working downstairs. Thank you all for coming and for being here. And for being with us together. Writing in our family is a family connection, a family event, and for particularly over the last 4 or 5 years, for Ari and I to be writing together, sharing poems back and forth between Cornwall and Chicago, and now to be here with you all is a real pleasure and treat. So this is Arianna. Arianna Ruth, formerly Margolis, now Moulton. And Ari grew up in Cornwall, here across the road from our neighbors. Cornwall School, Middlebury Union High School, where Ari was in the ART program. And then also, like many kids here, was simultaneously playing field hockey, ski racing, one season basketball, and lacrosse, too, before she went on to Bates College in Maine, and then found her way through internships in theater to Chicago, and went to Chicago for her master's at Columbia College. And now for many, many years has been teaching at Lincoln Elementary School. Where are these Lincolns here? Where both of Ari's daughters go. So Ari's been teaching third and now second grade for many years, and started a field hockey and lacrosse program at that school too. But for why we're here tonight, Ari started writing her own poems for herself, for friends, sharing them also with me. But now for the last 3 or 4 years has been publishing them in print magazines and journals and online magazines, and now these first 2 collections that she has too, that she's going to be reading to us. So, as you can tell, I'm so happy to be standing here with Ari. And please, can you hear us right now? Okay. Can we speak up? Okay. So just raise your hands anytime if you can't hear us. Okay. All right.
Thank you. Well, all of a sudden I'm feeling like I'm at my bat mitzvah again. Faces that are dear to me are here smiling back at me. So I'm going to let the work speak for itself. I'm reading from my first collection, Tracing the Curve, and my new collection, I've been meaning to tell you. Tracing the Curve, I wrote very much during the heart of COVID, when all of us were told to sort of turn into ourselves, and we were being told no in ways that we were never told no before. So I'm going to let the work speak for itself. Thank you, Becky, for having us. Can you hear me in the back? Okay, this is my teacher voice. Trace the Curve for Lori Lightfoot. What if someone told you you couldn't go where you normally go? Would the you in you come undone? Not seeing what you expect to see, you're not alone in your quarantine, except you are globally masked tightly tonight. Would you even know if someone rearranged your desk at work, moved your ruler aside, borrowed your protractor, and traced the curve we aim to flatten? It's these flatlands where the wind sweeps for miles I see in my sleep, particles like dust, keeping us awake, watchmen of an invisible enemy. If you've never been told no, then how would you know you wouldn't go back there, to that place you're supposed to be? You would have grabbed more of your things, that ruler. How could you measure freedoms of the past you've never lost until this moment when Madam Mayor quotes a poet, Miss Brooks herself calling upon us to cultivate dreams in the dark? It's bigger than us microscopically, and it wants to crumble you down, to sicken you, and your words bring us all to a place where gold will attach itself as we breathe freely tonight. We can snap. So you're going to hear me switching settings. And my father always said, ground yourself. Let the audience know where you are, who your speaker is, and what's at stake. This one will sound familiar to your environment. The black bear on the 11th hole. I forgot to write the poem about facing the bear. When June was still rising and the Vermont woods bore low-hanging fruit, people around town said bears were lumbering down from the mountains, finding sitting duck bird feeders, a loose lid on a garbage tin. We ran the graveled path around the golf course, a friend and I. Our gaits not the same, I faked I could keep up. Our banter bounced off the pines, kicking the pebbles with our overpriced sneakers. I looked a few steps ahead. Under my blue brim, we trudged the last hill near the 11th hole, I'm told. She grabbed my hip, that grip. I felt her silent fear. We have to turn around, she said. The bear's head, a mascot costume, a body smaller than imagined. Aren't our fears always this way? Smaller than we imagined? When we face them, breathless beyond ourselves, whatever's on your shelf, a distorted shadow, a figure in the dark may need dusting. Beware the unattended items lurking inside the folds, for they too need dew-covered fruit amongst the pines. Uncover and face the poem you forgot to write. My husband, who's not here, he's back in Chicago, manning his beautiful art gallery, which is in Lincoln Park. He did both the covers. He is a realistic and abstract artist. And the girls, our daughters are back here. We're very, very proud of his work, so I couldn't be happier to share a poem with you that I wrote for him when he was put into the Hall of Fame at his alma mater, the University Liggett School. This is called No Painting Should Match Your Couch, for Josh, the Hall of Famer. It's not the unpainted canvas that draws him near, the brilliant buoys of Maine that hang like earrings on a net. They're oranges brighter than a hue he can mix. It's not a painting that will match your couch or carpet, but a stolen glance into a soul selling papers solely to you. You won't notice the barbed wire that's diagonal across such beauty, its sharp subtlety splicing the clay roofs of a Croatian cliff. Never doubt that his eyes are like cameras housing their own darkroom, their own memory card, a vault of hues never imagined and scenes unseen. We can't see what happens when an artist leaves room for the unimaginable. We're simply honored onlookers looking for a familiar flower or detailed tower whose floor we may have once lived on. With legacy living on and design in his DNA, it only makes sense for the blank canvas to be a stage silently set for the dance of his brush. Okay, I'm bouncing back to Cornwall here. The nearness of wasps. I can't tell if I remember being 4, a dirt road day on spring turn, the name my father gave to our corner where trucks speed, cloud puffs, dry mouth. I can't say if the memory is mine, folded under summer's buzz. Pictures tell me what to know, what to remember when thinking back on rural days. I can't feel my brother's hand in mine, 20 months wiser, sticky summer palms, strawberry cheeks too red, too rosy. The bees on invisible strings flew rings around our blonder hair. The nearness of wasps. A dancing willow. Bend low the branches, hair-swinging, canopied tree castle, arrow-shaped leaves in August say nothing of fall. We knew Beaver Brook beyond the sledding hill, a singing stream, paper boat swallowing, chorused babble, nothing at stake when cut hay rolls into curved climbing bales, scratched thighs, fatigue. Summer stung me then, more alert, the hum of missing brother, his hands in the dust. So during COVID, none of us could do what we wanted to do or see who we wanted to see, and we found all these other ways to connect. But my parents have always welcomed me into their home almost, without question. And so we were able to sneak a visit in during COVID, but then I wrote this not knowing when I would see them again. And there were so many unknowns at that time. This is called Leaving Spring Turn. Because saying goodbye feels like hot twisting in my chest, breathless and bent over. Because not knowing when I'll see my parents again isn't what I had planned. I don't wonder if I could use all my fire, my many wishes to singe out the virus, beat it down to dust, to ashes. It's only the variety of songbirds this July morning holding me back, drying my eyes. I saw the upside-down bird last night, his head like a weight, an involuntary downswing. But aren't we all caught in the upside down when a droplet shatters into pieces, releases expectations, and spirals into a single bird? To unpack and repack stirs up feathers, the truth being that not knowing is enough. I was stuck in my apartment during COVID, teaching online. I had 2 daughters upstairs on different computers. My husband luckily had his art gallery that he could close off to the world, and he had his outlet there. But I was bored, to say the least. Pirouetting to the dishwasher. Because I was taught that boredom sets only in a boring mind, I'm keeping my mouth shut. Locked with a small key, a jewelry box, a spinning ballerina stuck. I've spiraled into a place where unloading the dishwasher feels like a competitive sport. My toes in a permanent pirouette may drill through the floor, staying in one place a cyclone. At least I could peer into the apartment below and throw down a rope, lower myself in my tutu. Do they have better snacks or a piano for plunking? Would they wonder how I came to be dressed like a tiny dancer when I rummaged through their cabinets of gourmet crackers? Even a crack in the wall would catch my eye mid-twirl, satin ribbons pulling me through to any place without strings, without a song that repeats when it's wound. Mickey, I think you'll appreciate this poem I wrote about my dad and his mowing. And Dwight, too. It's called Worship. The smell of cut grass reminds me of my father, his riding mower, a church pew, a daily prayer. This field, his Bible verse, as he avoids young box elders, rooted steeples, the mower's hum, a faint puff of diesel. Neighbors pass lanes of green drawn on our bumpy single acre. Given the chance, he would mow in heaven, landscaping the afterlife. His wife trimming the pine's lowest branches, removing sticks, a firmament of pine cones. A call to worship his John Deere, carriaging him off for miles. Okay, so those were some old poems, and I'm eager to share. I've just got 4 more for you from the new collection. The new collection is called I've Been Meaning to Tell You, It really has a strong sense of place in Chicago, I would say. So I'm going to open with Broad Shoulders, one of our city's many nicknames, the city of Broad Shoulders. If you're not from Chicago, you don't know the sinking city, a leaning lakefront angled in algae. You don't know where Lakeshore Drive hairpins at the Drake Hotel, the chatty Uber driver told me. You don't know the wild onion plant smells of its name. Chicagoa, a whispering Potawatomi, glanced at the river, whose bend never spoke of the Sears Tower. Cloud busting in black steel, a pillar, two spires. If you're not from Chicago, you've not needed an ankle-length coat for February strolls, that icy wind. This windy city speaks of politicians, air-filled, those boasting times when Ferris's wheel wowed them. Steel spokes near Navy Pier, a quartet in each car. But you wouldn't have known of our World's Fair unless Burnham visited you in a dream, whispering herbs in Horto, a city in a garden of roots, native and immigrant. I never expected to grow roots in Chicago, this city of broad shoulders. The city you don't know. I often find myself on the shores of Lake Michigan at sunrise. If you look up. Because sometimes you look up and the sun has beaten you to the horizon, reminding you that all things end. A season, a restless night. You'll never notice the tilt of the earth or time passing. You won't feel it like salt in your sneaker on this morning's frozen run, nor will it stop you from cursing wildly into the wind, those jealous branches. When morning light spreads a golden wash, aims to quiet you, to soundproof your soul for a moment. The watercolor air, the duckless harbor, and a friend or two that's just right for telling you to look up. Or to find your way forward through ice that's thick, no swaying masts, no rising sail to tell you nature's plan. Our windy city still shadowed just right for eyes that choose to see. Believe your poets. I told my 13-year-old to lay down when she hears gunshots, to play dead in the dust of Oz Park. Next to the patch of grass we play field hockey on, where we unleash our family dog. I told another mother that it's not a matter of if bullets will bleed into playgrounds or scatter the crowd at Lollapalooza. She faced the sun the way she knows how, let it seep the sorrow, the pregnant air. Her exhale told me to ignore unsteady ground, the nauseous wind. For it's when we see the underside of leaves that storms are near and windows close themselves. She didn't suggest we move out of Chicago, march on Washington, or find our country's quietest dirt road. The air between us prayed, and we believed it was listening. So my dad mentioned that poetry has always just been in the walls of our house, literally and figuratively. So we often exchange our work via FaceTime on the computers on the weekend. And the last poem I'm going to share with you is just an amazing daydream of my brother, my father, and myself all connecting in our special ways that we do. This is called Mercury's Morning. My father tells of life below zero, of Sundays when he's up early too, searching for a space heater whose hum might be enough to warm the books in his study until they open on their own, like paper leaves with words floating up off the pages, whirling into that place where his fingers write them back into a line, a meandering metaphor that might reach over his mountain gaps to where his sun is building a house of ice in the wake of Boston's snow bomb. A rotunda of snow bricks, benches built in for when frozen friends will join them as the light slants in that way. That only it does in January's last days. Will he write of Chicago's lakefront in frozen circles, like craters rolling themselves in undulation? Or will his frosted window pane keep him from listening to the landscape, its frozen heartbeat, its narrowing gaze? Thank you. Well, without further ado, I am so honored, so happy, so touched to introduce my father, Dr. Gary Margolis. I think everyone in this room knows him, and he's celebrating his 10th collection, What It Means to Be Happy. And I couldn't be more proud or more honored to be inspired by somebody who always said yes. He said, Ari, try this, ask questions. The harder you work in school, the more opportunities you're going to have in life. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my dad, my hero, my mentor, and my favorite poet.
I want to read a few poems from a working manuscript before I read from this new book. The manuscript is called Glass Flowers in Real Time. And glass flowers refers to the glass flowers in the museum at Harvard in the Ware collection. Here are a few poems from this manuscript, where I'm actually going to be working next month to keep engaging these incredible glass constructions. But I'm going to read a few poems from this manuscript. Can everybody hear me now? Is that better?
Yes, now.
Now. Okay, so this is from Glass Flowers in Real Time. The poem is To Love. Happy to be visiting the underworld of myself again. 2 stories down, under the sinking lily pads. Treasures cast over the side. Jung, the Swiss psychologist, said, we all have our shadow selves to love, to make us whole. What he didn't say, I keep to myself. How young I feel in my heart when I sleep, even some nights with no reason for my feelings to startle me awake. It's been a good day so far, without having to bury anything yet. Pretend it didn't happen. Write it into a draft of a poem. A story I have no way of writing, trying to shape-shift it into art, as if art is meant to save us from ourselves, from each other. Even you, my love, I look to whenever I need a good, honest opinion of what I can't admit. Visitors line up here, admission being the price we pay for happiness, for any return ticket. I didn't know Ari was going to read a golf poem. So we'll double up with this other golf poem. It's called An Art to This. I love the little yellow pencil I use at the golf course to write down my score. Whoever designed these didn't know I have a big right hand, and most days need a full-bodied pen, except when I'm walking off a green and need a truth to tell, a number so high, only a stub of a pencil will do. Like you, I can smudge an 8 into a 4. There's an art to this, I'm sure, for writers and golfers, for golfers who are writers and like to stockpile a drawer full of pens and pencils, their fictions of scorecards, the poetry of writing poetry in shorthand, sitting under a tree near the 18th green, composing a few lines to make a better story, to tell the boys in the clubhouse, men and women sharpening the ends of their memories, tales of how close they came to a first hole in one, why there's a 1 where a 10 should be, which obviously takes some doing. So we know all the storms that we've had recently, in the past, throughout the state. This poem is called After the Storm. Gratitude to you for checking in, calling me in the middle of the night to see if I'm not trying to get some sleep, sleeping on my roof. The water's that high, in some places in my brave state of Vermont, where the rivulets rise into rivers after so much rain, and the lake is our version of a Great Lake. It could take a week for the Green Mountain boys to row themselves across again, the cows to settle down, drier now in their stanchions. In places like Addison, they could be up to their haunches in mud. If it weren't for the sun rising again, like Frost might have said, to dry the beards of giants and elves, to make the fields ponds, not to canoe around. Even if it's true, sometimes more rain is good. Say, next fall, when the snow geese are looking for wet spots to go with dry rows, to eat leftover corn stalks, drink a night's worth of spill, and for fun can make boats of their bodies until they have to rise in the morning, head south, avoid any promise of flooding, which I'm afraid isn't the case now, in mysterious places like Buell's Gore and towns named for presidents, even dramatically in Weston, renowned for its playhouse, where citizens, actors, and directors are standing in a bucket brigade, passing mud and water, a kind of Vermont cement, from one neighbor to another, to let the theater open tonight, even if the theatergoers, Flatlanders, and Vermonters alike have to wear barn boots, Crocs, and slippers, anything to keep their feet dry, to hold them if by chance they have to watch the orchestra rising from its pit, applaud from their reserved seats on the roof, which some nights wouldn't be such a bad place to imagine sitting closer to the stars and clouds, if it weren't for the thunder and lightning, the flooding brook below, if you didn't have to check in, for which I am grateful, you, my company of friends. So some poems' titles are their first lines, so they run in together. For sure, it's a good question to ask this morning, out walking on the frozen track. if whether or not we Jews believe in an afterlife, if we know anyone who ever came back from walking around the timely, timeless universe, where one word crosses two paths, where we can mean two things at the same time, once in real time, once in eternity, which some morning it feels like it takes me to walk a few laps, although circling with you is like imagining what it would be like circumambulating inside a seashell, listening to an ocean of stars whirling around a galaxy, little sea creatures left behind, so we can know where they lived and not whether or not they believed in a soul, yours or mine or theirs, which is what a walk is for prayer, for contemplation, or nothing at all. As if we weren't out here this winter morning, rather sitting in an Orthodox yeshiva, a Jewish school, arguing about the existence of eternal life, what miles of rabbis say about this, proving what they think by pointing at the moon, standing on the freezing ground. So we know, thank you, we know that both kind of fortunately and unfortunately that our president and presidents often become kind of grievers in chief, too, having to help the country learn to mourn so many different kinds of losses. Home from the war zone. Such joy with you, my daughter, poet, going over what it means to turn a line of poetry, sensing when to know to break a phrase open. I know I've told you my all-time favorite line breaking happens in James Wright's Forever poem, A Blessing, in the last stanza where he writes, "Suddenly I realized that if I stepped out of my body, I would break into blossom." Most days I turn to when I need to give up the idea of perfection's broken body, or of the body politic, a more perfect union. The president, home now from a night in the war zone, doesn't abide to, reporting to our nation, sitting in front of his scrolling monitor, speech-making, making more of grief than some speechwriter thinks is ours to stand. I mean, he often tells us he lost a son, his wife and daughter, and knows what a hole in the chest feels like. Although by writing like, I don't want to imply every sadness, his or yours or ours, is exactly alike. Only that I like to believe we're here because we feel for and with each other, sharing the first drafts of our poems, feeling a sense of what they might become, without ever knowing for sure the joy of that shared moment forever after, which I don't want to suggest is the right way to close a poem, mine or yours, or even the president's. I read somewhere online, once a day he steps out on the White House portico to speak a phrase from a poem he's never told anyone he's written for his son, for his wife and daughter. A few years ago, I kind of think of it in this context. After all the years of having the privilege and pleasure of working at Middlebury College, and then beginning to make the turn into the next life, I was fortunate to be able to facilitate a writing workshop in a maximum security prison in New York State. I think most of us, as we drive over to the Northway or down to New York, over by Fort Anne in Comstock is where Great Meadow Prison is. So I was facilitating this workshop there. And most curiously, to men who were incarcerated inmates for forever, without parole. But they came to this writing workshop, this poetry workshop, and the thing that they seemed most interested in was writing in form, and writing in strict and difficult form. So for a few weeks, they wanted to practice and write sestinas. Not easy. I had never written a sestina. I'd avoided them. But also felt compelled, if they were writing them, to somehow find a way to write with them. This poem is called, and it's from this book, which is called Time Inside. And many of the poems in this book speak to the experience of being inside that prison with them. How difficult is it? I wouldn't have guessed you'd love this form and take it back into a cell's darkness. Even the super moon can't reach you unless you guys dream that light is meant for you. It's hard for me to think of so many men, green-suited, shelves for beds, guessing if the moonlight will shine that far back to you and the super darkness. It's darker than I ever thought. A moon meant for you. I never guessed I'd be inside, this far back, in a yard's, a wall's dark light. Locked in isn't a kind of light, although I can think of darkness as its own light. I can take back home with me, even if it doesn't mean I'm here to guess how it really is for you. I can't know. I'm not you. And that shining slice of light through a cell's window, I want to guess, is the super moon giving up its darkness, its secret shining meaning, so you can find your way back, all the way back to this poem's form for you, so meaningful, so darkly full of light. It won't leave you guessing when I'll come back to be with you, your guest, a poem turning darkness into light. So I'm going to read you a few poems from this new book that Ari mentioned, which is called What It Means to Be Happy. The book offers no formulas or no answers. Earthlings, from here it appears you're in more trouble than you know what to do with. If we thought it would do any good, we'd send one of our gods to help you straighten yourselves out. Even when we pledged not to intervene, to let your desire and nature run its own course. We'd be remiss not to say we survived ourselves without saying anything more about this. Some mysteries good, some not so good. Time isn't on your side, no matter what your human being Einstein thought. We learned he was almost hit by one of your cars one morning in Princeton, New Jersey. Imagine what a loss that would have been for chalk and blackboards and relativity. We have our own brilliant heroes. In fact, you can order one on Amazon. That dry riverbed in the middle of your planet, where the shamans once harvested their plants, knowing the lives they could save and the trees by going into trance and chanting, looking to the stars and the dark, secret notes we are sending. And this is the title poem for this book. What it means to be happy, rejoicing in someone else's happiness, forgoing a moment of useless jealousy, finding meaning where the trombone comes in Carlos Simon's symphony, Amen. Such pleasurable cacophony, listening by chance one morning to the composers composing happiness, including every instrument and then some you haven't heard of, some you have to make up names for, given how they crowd each other out and in, like the mass of birds lighting on the feeder. How hungry they bully each other with their kind of love, scattering seed to the ground. It pleases you to say they'll find it when they still feel hungry for you to see them, to hear their random symphony, notes the wind scores through the nearby branches, which makes you happy, thinking of it again, feeling their sounds inside your body, where things don't quite make sense, yet mean it. Like many of us here, in one form or another, in one place or another, we are and have been teachers. And even with my counseling work at the college, at different times I had an opportunity to teach. And years ago, it became known that the great Russian poet Yevgeny Yevtushenko was coming to be on campus to read in the college chapel. And I was teaching a class of first-year students, and one of them said, I wonder if we can invite Yevtushenko to come to our class. And one of the great things about working at a small college is that you know someone who knows someone who knows someone who can ask that question, and then things like that happen. Our class with Yevtushenko. Putin's sitting at the end of my couch this morning. I ask him if he's read the poetry of Yevgeny Alexandrovich Yevtushenko, who visited my class in Middlebury, Vermont, in the last century, who told my students to think of their poems as bales of hay they could throw into the air of the field, so they can fall apart, so they could see the flowers and barbed wire at the same time. We took turns going around the class reading our poems to him, pausing to see what his eyes thought, what he was making of our words. At the end, he said, listening to you is like looking into a pail of fresh milk, scraping thick cream from the top, which is more generous than I can remember. It was so long ago. It was so long ago, enemy countrymen were about to become neighbors. Tyrants appeared in my dreams, sitting on couches. And then the bell rings, the wind inside shuffling, casting our unwritten poems. I have a few more poems to read. Thank you guys for being in this in-between hour. I mean, we should raise hands to see, did people eat before? Or not? Or when? Well, we're still waiting for what the title of this poem is. Freak storm. Still a giant surprise when snow drifts the fields into dunes, when the plow skis the road again. Nothing I'd call more unusual. Isn't this what we expect at the end of March? Early flowers, a bluebird anxious to start nesting. Nothing I'd call weirdly out of place, even when I have to find my car somewhere out there in the swirling, leafless shadows, which doesn't make me too much of a freak, seeing what I see in the humped up mounds of snow, remembering with you what an honor to be called a freak a long time ago, when March drifted into April, when we did everything we could to stop the war. Here we go. Parade. How are your ears holding up? Are they holding up to my voice? Okay. Parade. I wouldn't mind sitting next to Miss Vermont in the back seat of her convertible, crowned and waving my right hand at the crowd, something she seems to have picked up from Queen Elizabeth and the Queen Mother, swirling her wrist, as if she'd grown up in front of a mirror in her father's milking parlor, waving to the cows, standing in their gowns, in their stanchions. No one knows if she'll be beautiful and cool enough when she leaves our state and enters the national competition. For now, she's our smart, beautiful princess and queen, young woman of the barn and milking machines. Who am I to judge how far she'll go in this contest, this life, and for that matter, trying to copy her, throwing colored pieces of hard candy to the curb, where a herd of girls are sitting, breaking rank with their mothers, running into the street to win a handful of them, as if this was Halloween and not Memorial Day. The washed fire trucks across from us, firefighters dressed in their dress uniforms, and not one veteran from the world wars, as there used to be, marching, sitting in their cars, saluting the sirens, flirting with Miss Vermont, one of the great freedoms they fought for, they served for. I enjoy myself so I can sit next to Miss Vermont, a man wise enough to wear a crown, to slip into my barn boots, my golden slippers. It's very nice to have a chorus of granddaughters back here who are doing this. And I have one more poem for you. So, Ari, where are you? Come on over here. Hey. So this is an earlier poem that I want to end with. It will be obvious when you hear this poem, but it's called The Two of Us. out walking, holding hands, you say, "Look, our shadows make an M." I wasn't thinking how we start to write ourselves across the snow until the sun changes or one of us decides to let go. But for you, at 3, the world inside our house spells itself into alphabets that start with A or M. I've been meaning to show you how some things work. The grosbeak's bill is forged into a V in order to split a sunflower seed. And the brook below our field only looks like one because we've had a January thaw. For a minute, I've forgotten you're not 2 and not asking why all the time, although I bless you now for how you've made me look more closely, even at a sparrow's nest near the roof's peak, which threatens to clog a vent and will put me higher than I like to climb on our extension ladder, letting go and running ahead. Your arms and legs fly through the letters of the alphabet like a sailor flagging through his semaphore. I do see some of the words your red and blue snowsuit spells, and when you fall, the shape of the angel that lies there under you. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Okay.